Hello, F2 Fan 5000 here, going to recap the Austrian weekend of the Formula 2 season. And what a fantastic weekend it was, with a lot of strategy, overtake, tyre management in play for a fabulous feature race. Unfortunately, the sprint race didn't reflect well on the Formula 2 drivers. A lot of crashing, a lot of incidents. Unfortunate, however, a lot of people redeemed themselves in the feature race, and so let's get the driver ratings out the way. Leonardo Fornaroli gets a 7 out of 10. His qualifying lap was sensational. The Formula Scout website has done an article on his qualifying because he always seems to save the tyres and do his fastest lap on the second push lap. So that's fantastic when the other drivers tend to have their tyres go off and can't improve. However, in the sprint race, it's on the last lap, he's lost points because he crashed into the back of Gabriele Mini. I'm not sure what he could have done to avoid Gabriele Mini because he was completing an overtake on John Bennett. It's still in the feature race. I have to say, he's gone backwards from pole to third place, which was promoted to second when Dunne was disqualified. Now, he's very fast off the line and he held his position. I feel like this could have been a Leonardo Fornaroli win, but through the pit stop phase, he's fallen behind both some other drivers and he's never been able to get that time back. He lost a lot of time in the final stint to Alex Dunne and Richard Verschoor. I don't know, the race pace could be a bit better. Sometimes he takes too long to overtake people. But generally, I think it's a strong weekend, so 7 out of 10 is. I'd just like to see a bit more pace in the feature race from Leonardo Fornaroli. Roman Stanek had a good weekend. I'll give him a 6 out of 10. He's been he's not a driver fighting for the championship, but he's bringing Invicta Racing good points, sprint race podium, which he gets some now and then, and his feature race, he fell back through the field, but I think he's held on for a couple of points. Arvid Lindblad, the qualifying wasn't so good, and he's blocked Jack Crawford on Crawford's flying lap. That means he got a penalty, and neither race was special for Arvid Lindblad, so I'll give him a 3 out of 10. Very promising driver, but that weekend was one to forget, and was capped off with a nasty crash between him and Oliver Goethe. Pepe Marti gets a 7.5 out of 10. He had a fabulous race win. He just pulled away from the pack, kept it clean, where everyone else was throwing it off the road. In the feature race, he's done well, I suppose, because he's held on to the back of Fornaroli, but then he got a penalty for his collision with Victor Martins. So that sees him lose a few places. And obviously he lost positions because of I must say, a deserved penalty. And that's on top of the grid drop he got for blocking in qualifying. So a little bit sloppy, but the overall result is fairly good for Pepe Marti. His best weekend since Saudi Arabia. Oliver Goethe, I'll give him a 1 out of 10. I've seen absolutely nothing from him, whether it's qualifying, race pace, feature race, sprint race, nothing. I've seen nothing from him. I'm sorry. Some drivers don't make the step up from Formula 3 to Formula 2 very convincingly. And, like Marcus Armstrong is a good example. He was excellent in Formula 3. Jehan Daruvala, and I think Oliver Goethe is one of those drivers that looked promising in Formula 3, but since making the step up to F2, he's been very unconvincing. Richard Verschoor gets a 10 out of 10. What a fantastic win for the fast young Dutchman. Now, I think he's also consolidated that with points in the sprint race. Well, I think the maximum points you can score in a weekend is 39, and he's got something like 30 or 31 points. It's a fabulous weekend. When Max Verstappen couldn't win the Grand Prix, Richard Verschoor won the feature race to give the Dutch Orange Army something to cheer about. Yeah, clinical, just always master of strategy, makes everything count. Always makes places in the pit stops, makes the strategy work. Yeah, can't praise him enough. Luke Browning gets a 6 out of 10. Poor qualifying, and then in the sprint race, he's had a very nasty accident with Sami Megatunov. Not his fault at all. And then in the feature race, he's coming through the field, but it's not that convincing. Not like Jack Crawford, who I'll get to in a minute, but still decent result. Dino Boganovic gets a 5 out of 10. Uh, he's very anonymous, especially in qualifying. Somehow he's held the car and got a point or two out of it, but mostly forgettable weekend. Gabriele Mini, qualifying was good. That he was looking like he's back on form, and then in the sprint race he's sort of going backwards, and then he runs into Cordeal. Now Sebastian Montoya was able to avoid Cordeal. I don't understand why Gabriele Mini wasn't able to, but it's not easy to absolutely come to a stop when there's a car in the middle of the track either, or to avoid it. It's semi-understandable. And then in the feature race, his engine blew up, so it's very hard. But I'll give Gabriele Mini a 4 out of 10. I feel like he could have done more to avoid Amaury Cordeel in the middle of the road. And Sebastian Montoya gets an 8. Sebastian just keeps impressing me all the time. He's doing a wonderful job. Now, the qualifying was slightly disappointing in 11th, but he's come through for some good points in both races. He's the only driver to make the reverse strategy work, and I think he's finished in the top 5 in both races. Fantastic, excellent pace. He's coming on song, and it's possibly the surprise of the season. Jack Crawford also gets an 8 out of 10. The Dams driver struggles with qualifying. I know he was blocked by Lindblad, but his first banker lap isn't that fast either, and it's his Achilles heel ever since he joined Formula 2. He struggled for that one lap pace. He's had an excellent race coming through the field, though, in the feature race, just pulling off the overtakes, having a lot of pace. He overtook Martins, he overtook Browning. So it's a fabulous result for Jack Crawford. Um, Now, if only he can improve that qualifying pace, but I'll have to give him an 8 for his race pace. Kush Miney gets a 2. Forgettable all weekend. Look at how much faster Sebastian Montoya was on the reverse strategy in the feature race. That's all I can say. Poor qualifying for Kush Miney. Sorry, just not a forgettable weekend. Alex Dunne gets an 8 out of 10. He's done a fantastic job this weekend, and I'm just very upset about this whole penalty business. If there's a problem with the plank, with the skid blocks, that should be a fine for the team. Instead, we're seeing a young driver penalised, having a podium taken away. 18 points in the championship, that's a lot of points. Now, he had, for some reason, drivers, when they do an FP1 session in Formula 1, when they go back to Formula 2, they seem to struggle. He's got it in the top 10. He got points in the sprint race. He came through from 7th on the grid, overtook a lot of people. The finish on the podium, was chasing down Richard Verschoor. Fantastic drive. I'm very upset that it's taken away from him, but I'll give him an 8 out of 10. Omri Cordeal gets a -5. An absolutely mindless spin caused an accident in the sprint race. He was a few corners from getting a good result in the sprint race, finally getting points on the board. It wasn't to be. And then in the feature race, not his fault, the car broke down. But -5 for Cordeal. Mindless. Victor Martins gets a 5 out of 10. A highly experienced driver, always qualifies well, and in the races he tends to go backwards. Poor tyre management, maybe that's about ART, but I'm just disappointed with Victor Martins. I feel like he should be getting on the podium more often. I don't know if ART are on top of this car or if Martins struggles with tyre management. I don't know what's happening. It's just not a good look for the Williams Junior. Ratomo Mayata gets a 5 out of 10. Unfortunately, he hasn't qualified in the top 10, so qualifying's an issue. His race pace usually tends to be better, and he scored some points in the sprint race. In the feature race, he's retired on the first lap with a mechanical issue. So very disappointing there, but not really his fault. Now, I have to be consistent. Remember back at Monaco, I gave Alex Dunne a -10. Well, now I wish I could take that back because Sami Megatunov, the move that he made here is absolutely insane. The crash he caused is spectacular, very dangerous stuff. Without the halo, they're potentially fatal. Dreadful move in the opening lap. And Megatunov has been very crash happy this season. Very poor form. I know he scored a point in this feature race, but I can't overlook that move in the sprint race. That was dreadful. He gets a -10. Max Esterson gets a 1. He stopped the crashes, unlike his teammate, but he has no pace at all. I expected more from Max Esterson. Sorry. Yeah, he was sinking like a stone in the feature race on that alternative strategy. No pace whatsoever. Joshua Dirksen gets a 5 out of 10. Is that fair? I don't know, because that AIX team, I don't really rate them very highly. Must be difficult driving that car. He got the sprint race podium, and then in the feature race, for whatever reason, his car kept slowing down. I don't know what that's all about. I'll give him a 5 out of 10. Chan Shields gets a 3 out of 10. I don't even know why. Slowest driver out there, but I don't know what else he can do. I mean, as I said, AIX is not a very good team. I don't know about their car, how they set it up, though I think they're pretty poor. John Bennett gets a 5 out of 10. It's a weekend of what might have been for John Bennett. An excellent qualifying. Was on for points in the sprint race. And then on the last lap, those first points of the season are taken away because of this crash between Gabriele Mini and Omri Cordeal. He's being overtaken by Fornaroli, and then Fornaroli runs into Gabriele Mini, and I'm almost certain there's nothing John Bennett could have done. Obviously, Van Amersfoort is a fairly weak car. I think there's not much more John Bennett could have done. And I'll give Rafael Villa Gomez a 3 out of 10. Absolutely anonymous all weekend. No pace, but, at least suppose he didn't have any incidents, so what else can I say? Now, that's the driver ratings done. Now to the analysis. I want to talk at length about Richard Verschoor here, because I know, you know me, I made a video about Tar Porsche saying, well, yeah, it took him 3 years to reach the Formula 2 title. However, I still think he should have been given a shot in Formula One. And Richard Verschoor, it's a tough one, but I have to say he's just driving so well, and he's bringing so much energy to his racing. I think, well, if he's supposedly a late bloomer, I don't mind. I really, I'm very upset because I know if Richard Verschoor finishes in the top two in this championship, the same old line will be trotted out. Oh, he's a fifth year driver, blah, 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 not elite, blah, blah, blah. But to me, Richard Verschoor is a survivor. You look at these teams that he's driven for, and you see where they are now, right? Just take a step back. In 2023, Richard Verschoor and Van Amersfoort Racing, right? He scored points, wins even for Van Amersfoort, podiums, top regular points finishes. Where are Van Amersfoort now without Richard Verschoor? What about Trident, Sami Megatuniff, an F3 feature race winner? They've got a handful of points. Richard Verschoor was winning races, pole positions with Trident last year. Now they're nowhere. That's the quality of Richard Verschoor. He's a very fast driver. He's the master of strategy. Master. When you have one of those races where there's late safety cars or chaos or something, he always finds the right strategy and comes through. To me, I think if a driver is ready for Formula One, they're ready for Formula One. But as we know with Formula One, it's not that simple. That's why I'm F2 fan, not an F1 fan, because if you can't explain to me why certain drivers make it to Formula One from Formula Two and others don't, if there's some sort of barrier for fast drivers getting into Formula One, well, how do you know that's the 20 best drivers in the world? If you can't guarantee me they're the 20 best drivers in the world, then I'll tell you what, don't tell me you're the pinnacle of motorsport. You're not. You know, a lot of protectionism, I would say, going on at the moment. Drivers with long contracts underperforming and getting away with it because they have a long contract. It's I don't like that. And then we hear that drivers like Richard Verschoor don't deserve a chance in Formula One. We're not even sure that drivers like Alex Dunne or Leonardo Fornaroli are going to make it to Formula One. So let's. But anyway, go back to the sprint. Yeah, in that sprint race, it's a horrible race. I didn't enjoy it at all. I don't really want to see drivers crashing everywhere. I want to see their skill. I want to see how they overtake each other, how they manage tyres. All I saw was crash, safety car, crash, red flag, crash. It makes the drivers look bad. I don't understand why it happened. Obviously, Pepe, Marti, Dirksen, Stanek kept their noses clean. Everyone else had issues. I don't know what was going on. Talk about brake problems. I didn't like that whole race. And then um, the feature race was sublime. It was beautiful. It was just all about driver skill. It was all about technique. It was all about managing tyres, overtaking technique. You saw Alex Dunne ripping through drivers, and Victor Martins just overtaking them. Pepe Marti, Fornaroli, just a fabulous young driver. Leonardo Fornaroli working very hard to get that podium. And we saw Victor Martins, perhaps it's the ART, perhaps Martins needs to work on his. Somewhere there's a problem with the tyre management, and that's been a problem ever since we've had the new ground effects cars for the ART team. They really struggle. And then we look at the championship, the halfway point, of course, and we can see that Richard Verschoor's well at the top. We see Alex Dunne has fallen a long way because of this silly penalty. I'm so upset about this penalty. I'm so upset about the F3 penalty. That's just, the whole point of this series is to determine who are the best young drivers coming through, and taking 18 points away for a bit of blank where that, to me, that's just not on. Just find the team, make the team suffer. I I've got nothing else to say. Because people are going to look back if Alex Dunne finishes second in the championship by the margin less than 18 points. People are going to say, "Oh, well, he's not a Formula Two champion." I mean, you know, and no one's going to point and say, "Oh, look, the disqualification, a plank." This is silly stuff. Uh, and on the back of that, he's very quick in FP1 in Formula One. Within a tenth of Piastri, and this is where I'm very frustrated, because I think time and again, Formula Two drivers have shown their quality in Formula One, but they're getting frozen out. And I think that's a tactic of current Formula One drivers. They don't, not necessarily in the best, fastest team they could be in. They go for the team that gives them a long contract so that they can keep in the sport against Formula 2 drivers who they know might be just as fast as them or even faster. Yeah. If you're a driver like Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, if you're a driver like Ocon, I mean, these drivers aren't reaching for top teams. Now, part of it is probably because the top teams may not be interested in them, but part of it's because they're shopping around for teams that give them the long contract. And, previously we've seen, the likes of Tao Pourchaire and Paul Aron and Fred Vesti not getting a seat in Formula One. And now it could happen to Alex Dunne and Leonardo Fornaroli. It's just, but anyway, the main thing is these drivers are impressing in Formula 2. I'd like to see more race pace from Leonardo Fornaroli. Some of the races he looks a little bit on the defensive. Obviously, he's got that whole wind situation hanging over his head, which was made worse at Monaco because he had the wind basically taken away from him by the safety car. Lindblad's fast, but he has an off weekend, and he's done that before in F3 and F4. Montoya's come out of nowhere and just impressing like crazy, whereas Gabriele Mini's starting to have a very poor season. And it started so well with pole in Melbourne. Uh, yeah, Martins. I don't know. He should probably focus more on impressing the Williams team with his FP1 sessions, because it hasn't been working out since the beginning of last year for Martins. ART, tyre wear. Dirkson's another one. I think that's a very good driver there, Joshua Dirkson, and he's just struggling this year. I think AIX are back market team, but as I've said time and again, I'm sure that Trident will hold on to the final spot in the team standings. I'm almost certain of that. They're very lucky to have scored a point here, I would say. Uh, yeah, and going forward, it's hard to predict Formula Two, the title race, but you've got to say Richard Verschoor's in a very commanding position. However, I'm not sure that MP is that consistent enough that they're going to take Richard Verschoor to the title. And Alex Dunne has a good chance to still take the title, but he needs to start finishing ahead of Verschoor, and I think that'll come to him, because I think MP. But as we saw 2022, MP can be very good when they find the sweet spot. And I think they've found it with Richard Verschoor. He's driving wonderfully. I think Dunn can still take the title. There are other drivers that are an outside chance, like Fornaroli, Browning, Crawford. Crawford's looking strong, but Crawford always fails to maximise the qualifying. Fornaroli qualifies well when he gets his second lap in. Uh, he needs to, and Browning, I don't know. I feel very bad for Paul Aaron, that's all I can say, because I don't feel like Bogdanovich and Browning are impressing. People were saying last year how fast the high-tech car is. Well, they're not really getting a lot out of it at the moment. Uh, and let's see what Sebastian Montoya continues to do. Also, Pepe Marti, is there a potential Racing Bull seat open for him? Well, he needs to start to really impress, and this sort of weekend is a big step in the right direction, but he's going to want to get those feature race podiums, and I'm not really seeing it now. Um, yeah, but should be a very interesting second half. The key races are coming up. Silverstone, Budapest, Hungary, Belgium, those three races are going to be very vital in the outcome of this F2 season. And probably I'd throw in Monza as well. That was very vital last year. The turning point, the point at which Bortoletto showed his power over Hadjar, who had a couple of too many off weekends. Yeah, there's not much else to say. Hopefully, I think John Bennett's a better driver than we've seen. Hopefully, he can get the odd point here and there. Miata's, but it's a very depressing situation with there. Uh, yeah, the field is not as strong, but there's a handful of very strong drivers like that are, there's at least seven drivers that are very strong on this grid, and it's been very interesting to see how the second half of the season plays out.